Let's go right ahead and review AEW Worlds End 2025, the last AEW pay-per-view of the year. In fact, the last American wrestling pay-per-view of the year happened on December 27, 2025, over there in Hoffman Estates. Not quite Chicago, but also not what you think about when you think of Chicago. It's, not quite that. Anyway, now arena. A well-known destination for All Elite Wrestling. This was a sold-out show. WrestleTix is reporting 8,968 tickets distributed. Nothing was left, and it does seem like it was a legitimate sellout show. No room left at all. I've had people boots on the ground. I've had my own troop, my own crew out there reporting back to me. That's not quite how it works, but just allow me to live the fantasy for a second. Telling me, or at least in group chats, that you'd show up to the building and there were actually signs saying tickets sold out, show is sold out. So there was no walk-up business. If you were waiting for the same day, you got turned around. You were sent home. There were no more tickets at all. Tony Khan was referring to the show as being a clean sellout. I don't know exactly what a clean sellout means in Tony's vernacular. If I were to make an interpretation, if I were to try and guess, I think what he means is that this show wasn't papered. Or if it was minimal, just as simple as that. I think I think that's what it means. I think Tony was kind of celebrating this idea that his show ended up just like super performing, like it's a business success for AEW. So again, look, if you listen to my Dynamite reviews, which you should, are available on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show YouTube channel or podcast destination, you know that we've been talking recently about how we've been seeing signs that AEW business is improving, is that there are true signs that there are more people going to the shows, and I'm not suddenly saying like there's this 110% uptick. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that it has been gently improving. It has been delicately, slowly, rising up from where it was, where it was not great. So now that this is a very good, what I'm trying to say here is that this attendance is a very good indicator that there is an improved level of demand, and at the very least, what was programmed on this show got the ticket buying audience's attention, and they were ready to go. They were just like, they were absolutely ready to shell out tickets and go there to see the show live. Continental Classic, I would absolutely put that in the win column. I think just, from my own observations and whatnot, I would say, because of course, what else can I really, not based on everyone else's observations. It's my own. It's my review. It's my podcast. It's my thing. Based on my own observations, I don't see what else on this card that could have truly been the element that would have drawn people to the building, if not the finals of the semifinals and the finals of the Continental Classic. Right. I would even say specifically Kazuchika Okada versus Konosuke Takeshita, a match that this company has been dangling, teasing for months upon months. This was probably one of the most anticipated matches from AEW fans. I myself was excited about it. I I posited on the podcast recently that, on the Dynamite review a couple of days ago, I posited that that they had decided to go with Okada and Takeshita in the semis so that they could announce the match, because I thought it was like, I thought the finals were going to be Kazuchika Okada versus Konosuke Takeshita. I felt like that was the bigger match that you could do. But so I found it weird, but I also, like I said, posited the question: are they putting Okada and Takeshita in the semifinals to sort of guarantee to the ticket buying and pay-per-view buying public that that we will guarantee that this match is going to happen, right? And to me, that is unquestionably a factor that drove people to watch the show, to go buy tickets and go watch the show live. I do not think a four-way main event is any kind of draw in any type of situation ever. I don't think that's compelling. Could be just me. I think I'm right. I would like to see a history of pay-per-views main evented by multi-person matches that were unquestionable draws. There's probably a couple of exceptions out there, of course, but generally speaking, I would assume that it's not necessarily something that draws people to buildings. And I think that in this circumstance here, the Continental Classic did what it had to do. I think it's look, think about it. When Tony Khan started this 3 years ago, almost defiantly, right? Almost to shut people like me up. You remember the put your money where your mouth is line? You kind of felt like Tony was doing this was doing this in a very standoffish manner, where he was like, no, you know what? Fuck you. Here's, you keep complaining that I don't do sports-based wrestling. Well, here you go. And then, sort of gave that to us and double dared us to tune in. It's like, look, and people did. That's the thing, is that people did. Outside of, people like myself, the C2 was shown to be a ratings success. It was a business success. It was a business success last year. This year, whatever the ratings are now, because of how Nielsen is, I don't think anyone is drawing any comparisons. That'd be a little silly if anyone did do that. But you can't not say that it didn't have an impact on ticket sales for World's End. That would be also a bad faith argument, and I also think it'd be false. Again, like, what else on this card could have drawn people if not for the Continental Classic? This time of year for AEW is an unmitigated success, time and time again. And people are, and especially this year, where I thought that this was a particularly great version of the C2. I think it is the best version of the tournament that we've gotten so far. And it was close to being perfect, but then AEW had to get into its own way. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a little bit. We're still talking about the business side of it, not necessarily the creative or the outcomes. It was tremendous. It was excellent, and I think to me there's not much. There's not much of a surprise here that the show drew so well. Like, I'm not particularly shocked that the show just like drew so well. The C2 has been excellent, and again, just continues to sort of hammer home a point that I think wrestling fans just like to watch wrestling. Color me, quirky, but time and time again, we're shown that wrestling fans, seem to really want to watch pro wrestling as opposed to, other stuff, the more sports entertaining things. You create a tournament upon the promise that there's going to be no nonsense, that's going to be straight up professional wrestling. And guess what? People are into that, and they got into it. I thought they did a fantastic job telling different types of stories in the C2. And look, we're gonna talk about those final ones here in a second or two, because we're gonna start talking about the show now. The Warren, what did you think of the show? Did you think this? How good did you think this show was? I thought it was. I thought it was good. I thought it was a good AEW pay-per-view, so ultimately, that would be a show that falls under expectations. And that's why, like that's just the thing where AEW is a victim of its own success, because typically you expect excellence out of AEW pay-per-views, and I think that's fine to have that expectation. So when it underdelivers on that spot, and it's not that the show was bad, I think most of what happened here on the show was good. That was the floor. I don't think there's anything that was outrageously bad on this pay-per-view. Not even close, in fact. But it lacked that that level of quality and high level action that we're used to see out of AEW pay-per-views. So that's why I feel like I think this one kind of underdelivered. I think it's sort of kind of didn't live up to the working standard, let's put it that way. But nonetheless, a good show. That's all. Like, if I were to grade this, I'd give it a B. I think a B would be fair. I think this is a B level show that we got, which is fine. And there was one absolutely excellent, mind-blowingly great match. And outside from that, like, everything just like happened, and there were good matches, and that's like, those are my overall umbrella notes. Those are the high level cliff notes, and we're going to get into the details now. And I think what we'll do, sports fans, if you don't mind, I think the order of how we're going to cover this, we're going to start with the AEW Men's World Championship. Then we're going to talk about the Continental Classic. And then we'll do reverse order. We'll scroll from then the top all the way down, if you're okay with that. And even if you're not, that's what we're doing. So there's no way to stop me right now. It's recorded. So what are you going to do? So let's get to it, because this was a very eventful, newsworthy show. There's a lot of things to break down, especially when it comes to the main event, where MJF defeated Hangman Adam Page, Swerve Strickland, and Samoa Joe to become the new AEW Men's World Championship. And boy, it's a minefield out there. Did I say minefield? No, I said minefield. But it's also a minefield. I don't know, like, if you want your brain to explode, it's not pretty out there. It's not great. And look, continuing to establish the fact that MJF is a divisive guy, and I think that's a testament to what he's supposed to do, what his role is, what he wants to accomplish in pro wrestling. I think he's. I think there's no one better to do what he does as a heel. I don't think anyone can really touch him. There's no one who creates that level of divisiveness in pro wrestling today. I'm hard pressed to think of someone even remotely comparable on that level. Is very important too, right? Because if you want to start talking about Logan Paul is not, he's a nice, tidy little mid-carder there in the old WWE, right? So if you want to talk about Logan Paul, that's, sure, but also no, we're not talking about the same level of wrestling star. Look, I told you all on the Dynamite review, if you listened to it, and if you didn't, here's the thing. I told you, I said it, I saw it, I smelt it. Didn't taste it, but the baby faces were standing tall at the end of the MJF segment. You had Hangman and Swerve, who had choked Max out in this go home segment, right? And I told you all, this is probably a sign that MJF is going to win. And like clockwork, I had people tell me that's a WWE thing. That doesn't necessarily happen in AEW, but that's a WWE trope, right? And I agreed. But I also, in that same review, I also said, I said the last time the baby, like when Hangman Adam Page was champion on the go home show to Full Gear, he was standing tall in the middle of the ring. And what happened? Samoa Joe took the title away from him at the pay-per-view. And the exact same fucking thing happened. So now we're going to have to start paying more attention to this, because I agree for a while. AEW, you know, the standing tall gimmick, you know, where it's like most of the time in WWE, if the champion is left laying in the ring on the go home show, that means he's winning at the pay-per-view. That was typically the tell. AEW sort of didn't necessarily stick to that. Now they seem to be sticking to that. And I told you all. And again, people don't listen to Warren. They should listen to me more. People should come in and walk up to me, shake my hand, said, once again, Warren Hayes, your instincts were spot on. Your irrepressible understanding of professional wrestling has guided us down the correct path once again. Thank you, Warren. Thank you for your service. But that doesn't happen. Because people prefer to just, oh no, Warren, it's not that. Ha! I say, ha! Nonetheless, thank you for allowing me this very slight and this very slight victory lap on something that I really shouldn't be victory lapping regardless. It's such a, it's so basic, but fun nonetheless. So that's the result. That's what happened. And look, I'm going to tell you, I think MJF winning the world title is the most interesting outcome out of all four of those guys that were in that ring. And, is it a controversial statement? Maybe to some, not to me. I think it's the most interesting outcome. And there are reasons why, a lot of people are probably like fuming right now. And look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I cannot change what anyone thinks about MJF, right? I cannot. If you are one of these people who just like absolutely loathes Max and feels it in their insides, right? I don't want to argue with you. There's no point, because there's nothing that I can say that will change your mind, okay? Because out there right now, there are people who are absolutely unhinged and completely unreasonable in their approach to MJF. And it is fascinating to me where you can, on Blue Sky, it is particularly prevalent, where you can post the mildest praise in regards to MJF, like the mildest thing. And like me a couple of weeks ago, or maybe 10 days ago, where I said, I posted on Blue Sky that MJF was the most successful. I felt like MJF was the most successful heel in pro wrestling today. And the responses that you get then, oh, so you like misogynists and it's what? Hang on a second. And it always comes down to the same thing. And it always comes down to the same basic elemental stuff, in that I don't understand why professional wrestlers aren't given the same leeway as an actor does when they're performing a character. It's as if people legitimately believe that Maxwell Jacob Friedman, the man, as opposed to what we see on television, what we see in media in general, that they legitimately believe that he's, some kind of women-hating racist. And it's completely baffling to me where a lot of folks can't connect the dots there and say, well, there is a separation between character and person. Whatever we're portraying on television is not necessarily who we are. It can be an extension. It can be an overreach. It can be, we often talk about authenticity in pro wrestling, about how, wrestlers who tap into, what makes them tick is something that always comes across more authentically on television. Max, I think, is just a talented performer who is able to convey things that he may not necessarily adhere to in real life in a way that makes it very, very convincing. Does everyone, by this logic, by this logic, does everyone believe that John Hamm is a misogynist for portraying Dan Draper, right? Why aren't we creating that intersect? Why is the division there? Why is the division there? Why does that exist? And it's crazy that we're still unable to say to separate the two and to create this layer while watching it, where it's oh, this is so over the top, right? This is just this is pro wrestling, and pro wrestling, as you know, is completely fixed from top to bottom. Nothing appears on television that hasn't been, woven into a story. None of it is real. And yet there are people who are instantly fixated on the fact that, MJF is fucking Andrew Tate, and there's a guy who is not putting it on, who believes what he says, who is actually a bad person. And somehow we're able to make that distinction, but we're not able to afford a performer who is performing a character on television on a pro wrestling show specifically. We're not able to allow him that kind of sympathy. But look, the unhinged and unreasonable people are out there, and I want to separate those folks from people who do have reasonable takes, with people who are able to articulate reasons as to why they're fed up with MJF. And that I can understand. And typically, you can have discussions with that. But I can understand why there are some people who have these thoughts about MJF, right? Who may not like him for very, very arguable and oftentimes legitimate reasons, right? Where they go, well, and they're fed up, I should say. They're fed up of people saying, well, MJF actually works because of this, and that. You just don't get it, right? And I've decided that moving forward, when it comes to my analysis of MJF, I don't want to contribute to that level of discussion. My approach regarding MJF moving forward, and I'm going to do my best to stick to it, okay? My approach moving forward in regards to MJF is going to be something along these lines, okay? I am not going to focus on the discourse because there's no point to it, because the discourse, I think, is unhinged. And I think that people legitimately lose their fucking minds. There are too many people, there are too many unreasonable people for anyone to straight focus on the discourse. So I will not focus on that. I will nonetheless continue to point out what is strong in MJF's case and what isn't. And I've done that in the past. I've done this multiple times. Yeah, MJF popped into my stream 2 years ago in the midst of the Brochacho stuff because I kept shitting on it. Because I kept saying, he challenged me to get a funny bone. Me, a guy who is intrinsically funny, right? Right? I'm funny, right? I am and will be critical of MJF when the situation calls for it. And look, my track record is there. So you can, I've got nothing else to say. You can go check out for yourself how I have treated Max in the past. If you as a viewer, as someone that cross paths on social media or whatnot, if you want to have truly critical discussions about it, right? Like true criticism, I'm more than open, right? I'm more than open to chat with you about it. But if your argument is he's an incel, women-hating bigot, then no, I'm not interested in having a conversation with you. There's nothing to glean out of that because I will fundamentally believe that you are absolutely wrong, that you're stringing together words that sound bad to make them look bad, and there's no basis in what you're saying. People have those types of visceral, people have these types of visceral reactions when it comes to Max because they can't playfully sneer at him because they think he's legitimately awful, right? Because they think he's a terrible person and that attacks them at their core. And again, like that's something I've been saying, that's something I cannot change and I don't want to change. Shouldn't be the impetus of change, and that can only come from the person. And if their values are struck, well, what else can I say here? And there are some people who go about it very reasonably. Some people that I truly like online that we align with many things. In general, we diverge when it comes to Max. And I'm like, I'm not going to terminate whatever good relations I have with them just over one thing, something as frivolous as professional wrestling on top of that. It's fine, but it's the people who are entrenched in their unreasonable, visceral dislike of Max that I can't talk with. And there's no way to get a discussion going. There's nothing to talk about, right? But that's because I believe, like I said, it's because they can't playfully sneer at him because, I think that 20 years of unopposed professional wrestling by one singular vision, I think it has completely warped the way people see pro wrestling and in particular how heels are treated. Since everyone is a smart fan now and no one wants to be worked because somehow that makes you come across as weak and dumb, now you don't want to get mad at the heels. You want to be able to playfully shake your fist at them and everyone wants Dominic Mysterios. Now they want Dominic Mysterios. They don't want MJFs. And that's fascinating to me because I think Max is exactly what a true heel should do. He should make you get truly upset. He should make you want to bring knives to the arena. Don't actually bring knives to the arena. I'm talking about like what used to happen in the territory days, okay? I don't do like, even if you really don't like Max, don't bring any weaponry of any sort to wrestling shows. That's bad. Okay. That's inherently bad. Don't do it. But nonetheless, a successful heel should make you fucking upset. He should make you mad. You should want to boo him and curse the earth he walks on. And the way he approaches it, well, he's using modern sensibilities to get his points across. That's all there is to it. He's just a modern heel for modern times. I still think he's the most successful heel in pro wrestling today. And all that being said, again, he is the most interesting person to win the title out of that four-way at World's End, right? AEW, and I'll tell you why now. AEW is babyface heavy. You've got incredible top guys that people really love, but very, very weak on the top heel situation. You put a guy like Max in the situation that people inherently don't like, being the top guy. He's able now to create different stories with the top baby faces of the company with high level stakes that people will be invested in because people will want Hangman Adam Page to beat the piss out of MJF. People will want Swerve Strickland to take the title off of MJF. Might even get a surprise babyface challenger or two in the meantime. Why not a newly turned Jon Moxley? Look, we're doing some fantasy booking right now, and that's not my thing. I'm not into it. I don't want to do that specifically, but the point still stands. MJF as the top guy holding the top title, being a heel in AEW in 2025/2026 is much more interesting an outcome than Hangman, than Swerve, or even keeping it on Joe, who I thought was fine. I enjoy Samoa Joe as much as the other person, but is he really like your top guy? Is he really? No, he's not. And no disrespect to the great legacy of Samoa Joe, but clearly this was not the path, right? And he's a good worker on top. A good worker? What? Excuse me. A great worker on top of that. MJF is, right? I'm jumping back and forth here. He's a great worker on top of that. Because despite the fact that people focus on every single word he says in his promos and try to dissect it and pull it apart, with him dropping the P. Diddy line, and people were talking about that for 2 weeks, whereas the late night talk show hosts were doing P. Diddy jokes, for weeks upon weeks upon weeks. I don't understand why. No, I do understand, but people get so laser focused on all the little things that irk them. I feel like we lose the spectrum of how great Max is. He is a tremendous professional wrestler who has all the gifts, who has all the talents to truly be a top guy. No one even questions him being a top guy. It's more like it's never a question of should MJF be a top guy or not. It's whether people want him to be in the top mix or not because they don't like him. But it's hard. It's difficult to argue that he doesn't belong up there. And look, I've said it. This is another thing I've said before. I think the amount of hate MJF gets online is via a very vocal but small and angry group of AEW hardcores who just do not like him, that they have their favorites. Okay, I'll let you figure out what their favorites are, who have their favorites and who would, die on the cross for their favorites to get everything, all the top accolades in the company, and dislike anyone who comes to disrupt what their favorites are trying to accomplish. And it's a small group. And do you know why I think this is a small group? In fact, not only do you know how I know it's a small group? Because when Max comes into the buildings, when he comes out, he gets good reactions. He has great reactions, in fact, from the live crowds when he comes out. Again, I had people that I know who were at the show at World's End who straight up told us in our group chats, MJF, when he came out, biggest pop of the night, and got a huge reaction when he won. And you saw it on TV. People popped. People jumped out of their seats when Max won the title. It wasn't a situation where people were leaving the building. You didn't have a bunch of people chanting, it's like, cancel HBO Max. That's a terrible chant. Just cancel Max. But then you say cancel Max, and then they might be thinking that we're trying to cancel MJF. What would be a good, think about that, everyone. I was going to say chat, but I'm not live right now. But think about that, those of you listening right now. What's a good chant if you want, the audience to cancel their HBO Max subscription in protest in protest of what happened, right? It's like, I don't know. Look, I have seen people who said, I'm going to stop watching AEW, right? And again, whatever floats your boat. I mean, I'm not going to stop that. And I'm not even going to say it's silly or stupid. It's fine. It's up to you. That's your thing, you know. But what I'm saying is that I'm not seeing this tidal wave of go away heat, for lack of a better way to put it, when MJF shows up, when he does his thing, and when he wins, when he leaves. And that's because people like to cheer for him. They like to cheer for stars, right? And look, again, I know I just said that I wouldn't be addressing the discourse anymore, okay? But bear with me. Like, consider what I set up to be like the New Year's resolution, okay? We're starting this on January 1st, okay? Just give me some leeway here for right now. I've had people tell me straight up, right? Oh, well, if he's getting cheered in the buildings, then he mustn't be a good heel then, right? Right? And that's a disingenuous argument. People will pop for stars in the company. They will pop for stars. And listen, heels being cheered has been going on for decades. This is nothing new. It's one of the things that has irked longtime wrestling fans for years, but it's been going on for decades. Okay, the Outsiders, Edge, Roman Reigns, if you want a recent example, like the culmination of decades of the cool heel stuff is here, and this is where it has led us to, right? Where even a guy that you absolutely should be hating still gets cheered because he's a star, because obviously the fans like what he's doing, because people are behind it, because they enjoy his work. And I think that is the majority of AEW fans. I think the AEW hardcores who are online and are very, very vocal about somehow him being, saying things that you'd hear on an Xbox Live game of Call of Duty, I think those are just very loud, very vocal people who post in the replies of every pro MJF post that's out there. And let me tell you something. As someone who has played on Xbox Live back in the day on the 360, as an adult, don't get me wrong, trust me when I say MJF doesn't even say a fucking fraction of what is said on Xbox Live back in the day. Not even close. Like, the stuff that he said, like if you were to make a pie chart, right, about the absolute dregs that are being talked about, the absolute worst shit being said on Xbox Live back in the day versus what MJF says today, MJF's part of the slice would be one of the thinnest fucking slice. You know exactly what I'm talking about. A slice of the pie so thin that you can barely see it, that you have to do, you can't, it's so thin you can't put the number in the slice. It has to be like a little line guiding out of the slide, guiding out of the slice with the 0.01%, right? And if it wasn't for that indicator, you wouldn't even know there was a slice there. That's how fucking thin it is. But anyway, I digress from the point of the heels being cheered. Look, if you're upset about heels getting cheered, well, I want to welcome you to RSPW on Usenet circa 1998. This shit has been going on for decades at this point and has been reinforced by promotions since. It's such a passé, uninteresting argument. Would I prefer that heels didn't want to get cheered? Yes, I guess I would. Yes, I would. But this is where we're at, right? And fans are okay with cheering for heels if they're good stars, if they're top stars, if they're top guys, and because they want to cheer their top stars. what ultimately it is stuff that I've been talking about pretty much for the back end of 2025, is that AEW Hangman won the title, but then everyone else disappeared. All of the top guys in the company, Will, Swerve, MJF, all of the real top guys in the company, they all went poof. They all just disappeared, and AEW has been worse off for it. And now we're finally getting the band back together. The only part that's missing now is Will. And, there's rumors coming around that he might be coming back a lot sooner than a lot of people thought he would. That I don't know about that. I haven't heard anything necessarily. It's just I've heard the same rumors as probably you all have heard. And MJF factors into that equation because people were legitimately thrilled to have him back. Because this promotion needs a guy like MJF. MJF walking out, doing top guy stuff, being in the mix, it feels like AEW. Just like it feels like AEW when Hangman is around doing top guy shit. Just like it feels like AEW when Kenny Omega is around doing shit. Or John Moxley. That's how it feels like AEW. And we're so close, like I said, to getting the band back together with Will showing back up. And look, I don't want to be the guy who is already burying the corpse when, the guy isn't even dead yet. But, the target of Will Ospreay beating MJF at Wembley Stadium later in 2026 is tremendous stuff. It's a great story, and it kind of should be that. We should have, a big time run by Max who just beats everyone, and then you have the hero Will Ospreay who wins the Owen Hart tournament this year to secure his spot at Wembley. I hope they do that again. I like the tie-in of the Wembley, of the Wembley shot, or at least the all-in shot, World Championship shot being tied into the Owen Hart tournament and adds some. I like that they did that last year. Hope they do it again this year. And I think it's great. I think it'll make for some compelling storytelling, and then people will all be doubly excited when Will wins the title. I don't know. Am I the only one who sees this as a perfectly acceptable path that makes so much sense? And then you're like, oh yeah, you know what? Max winning the title and not any of the three other guys does make a lot more sense. And trust me when I tell you, yes, MJF has Tony's ear, and Max may exercise a little more control on some parts of his creative, but Max is not the only guy who has ideas, and everything does end up going through Tony, and Tony does, he gives his approval on it or not. So if you're upset at Hangman not winning the title or Hangman getting a short reign or whatever, there's only one guy to blame, really. And I'm sorry to say that it's not Max. It's not MJF. There's one guy who's in control of all of this, who's making these decisions, and his name is Tony Khan. And I can tell you with certainty and aplomb, okay? Because we've had this argument when I've told you the exact same thing at the height of the Mercedes Moné stuff, right? There is no one in All Elite Wrestling that is in complete creative control of their character or what they do. That is just a fact. There is no one that has a contractual creative control over what they do. And that's like I said, it is just a fact. So I want you to think about this. If Max comes in and he says, look, I think I have a great idea. Tony, here's my pitch. Have me win the title at the 4-way, so then we can have a Wembley match between me and Ospreay, and you can build Will to be the hero of the company and so on and so forth. And Tony Khan says, that's a good idea. It's not on Max. It's on Tony. If Tony didn't want that to happen, Tony would go, nah, we'll try something else. And you cannot blame Max, just like you can't blame any pro wrestler who goes up to the boss, rubbing their hands together going, I got a great idea, Tone. Listen to this pitch. And then pitches the idea, and Tony turns it down. Or Tony says, we're going to do this another way. Especially, and this is particularly the truth, and this is something else that all of you need to figure out, how to parse this in your brain. But Tony recently was doing interviews and was saying, hey, the creative side of things, I'm in control now. I'm the only guy. I prepare everything. It used to be a lot more collaborative. Now, I'm in control. I give outlines of what I want, and then the peons figure it out. He didn't say peons, that's just me. He says my staff figures it out, okay? So again, all of you are going to have to figure out a way to parse that into your brains moving forward, that if there is shit that you don't like that is happening in AEW, there is one man to blame. And it is not Maxwell Jacob Friedman, who is doing what all pro wrestlers do, and that is going up to the boss, pitching ideas, and hoping that the boss will accept the idea. It is Tony Khan. People seem to think that Max has run of the place, and he doesn't. Now, is it his fault that the boss likes his ideas? That the boss sees him as a top guy and pushes him in accordance? That's not Max's fault. Max is doing his best for that to happen. But ultimately the decision lies with one man, and that is Tony Khan. And you're going to have to figure out a way to make that a reality in your brain. Tony even told us. He told us explicitly, I'm in control. I do the whole thing. I create outlines and then they figure it out. And then they come back to me and I approve or send back to the drawing board. Anyway, the things that I am looking forward to is to see how much of Max's presentation is going to have changed. Are we still going to get insecure Max? Is he going to be more confident? Is he going to be able to tighten up his promos? Or is he still going to be lost in 10-minute promos on a weekly basis? When we talk about legitimate criticisms to have about Max, that is a legitimate criticism to have about MJF, because he's so good when he does these small, punchy, angry promos, but a lot of times he gets lost in his own sauce when he's given 10 minutes of the quarter hour to cut his promo. And I will 100% agree with that. So it's time to see how much evolution, how much change that this is something that everyone has been saying. Oh, well, if you were to change, if you were to evolve, we'll see. We'll see what kind of changes are upcoming. I also like the idea that everyone can sort of browbeat him and say, Max, you are the same guy. You're the same insecure kid who started in 2019. We have all grown as people. You are still the same dipshit. And I kind of like that. I like that a lot. I don't know if I want Max to go through this incredible transformation, this incredible moment of personal growth. I don't know. But then again, I'm not part of the group that thinks he's the worst thing to happen in professional wrestling either. Going to see how this all turns out. We've got months of MJF as champion coming up. So we've got more than enough time to see what exactly is going to happen here. And look, we haven't even talked about the match itself. I've been what, like 50 plus minutes talking about Max, and we haven't even touched the match itself. Look, I don't have many thoughts about the match itself. Like, as many of you know, it's a 4-way match that I really don't, it's not my cup of tea. I don't like 4-way matches for titles, especially, your main world championships. I think, I think it stinks. But it was fine. I will tell you, I kind of saw it coming when Max was constantly being booted out of the ring, that he couldn't do anything, that everyone was constantly kicking him out. I was watching it with Kristen and my oldest son, who's still in town, and we were watching it together, and I said, oh, Max is 100% winning this. I could see it. I was like, these are all signs he is 100% winning this because he's not getting any offense in. They're preparing something. He's going to get a sneak win here. I think the most interesting part of the match really was when Hangman and Swerve fought. I mean, it was little bursts, but it was cool. It was interesting. Reminded you how much chemistry these two have in the ring. And I even said it on the Dynamite review. I don't want these guys to be pals or allies. I want them to hate each other's guts again. It's so much more interesting. And the potential for their matches to be better on that front is so much more alluring than them being pals or allies. But I get it. Look, I also understand why they're doing this, why they're creating this alliance, and that it'll probably be the same until Will comes back. Where you have the triumvirate, the top three guys. The Justice League trio, right? With Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. It's the same thing here, Hangman, Swerve, Ospreay, all three of them together. Like that's something where it's supposed to give you chills. You're supposed to go like, yeah, these are the heroes. These are the top guys. And I get it because it's good moments. It's the fans like it. I like it too. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think everyone kind of gets behind it, but yeah, it's, if you were to ask me what my preference was, where my preference lays in Hangman and Swerve, drinking each other's blood. That's where my preference lays. And Joe was okay, and the ops interfere, and then they get thrown back. And I hope everyone is. Look, you want to talk about weird booking? And again, this is something that you can't put on Max. It would appear that Hangman Adam Page is going to be tasked to make something out of Hook. Looks like Hangman is going to be put in a spot here where it's going to be like, yeah, Hangman, you got to get Hook over now. This is going to be your job. Going to make Hook happen. Did you notice when Hangman and Hook exchanged glances? When they stared at each other from across the ring, despite the fact that it's been hammered week upon week that Hook is the reason Hangman lost the title. There was no reaction from the crowd, and that's because no one cares about Hook. And this is what Hangman's going to do. Whose fault is it going to be now? Is it going to be Max's? Anyway, I saw people wonder, it's like, well, why put the title on Joe if only to have it won by MJF, from one heel champion to another heel champion? Well, duh. Obviously, it's to not burn the MJF Hangman match, which is something that people will want to see again. And you probably want to put that on a bigger pay-per-view than World's End or whatever. You're probably going to want to put this on the Revolution card, for instance. And here's the big spoiler. The match is going to fucking kick ass. It's going to rule. Because the Hangman can't have bad matches. And MJF is a great worker. Well, they're both great workers. It's just my line when it comes to the Hangman is the Hangman can't have bad matches. That's why they went from Joe to MJF, because they want to keep the babyface matches fresh for this heel who will be going through all the top babyfaces until he hits a wall with the aerial assassin Will Ospreay. But yeah, look, this was fine. I'm going to wrap this up on this point because we still got a lot of stuff to talk about. But this was fine. This was fine. And, I don't like these multi-man matches for titles. I said it would set up stories, and it did. And Wednesday is going to be the kickoff point for the new year, for this new era that has MJF at the top of the company. Let's talk about the Continental Classic now. Jon Moxley has won the C2. He now has the Continental Classic Championship, or the Continental Crown. Did they still call it the Continental Crown? I like when they called it the Continental Crown. Listen, this look, I'm just gonna get this out of the way straight off the bat because I'm ready to shower praise here. The whole unified championship shit is just absolute, complete and utter trash. And why did we care? Why was this a thing? why did we create a unified title off of, the Okada Omega match? Like, there's just so many whys, and it all just fell apart, and it's so dumb. And now there's too many titles in AEW again, and it's dumb and it's stupid. And I wish it never happened. I don't know why they didn't stay unified. The title, it's in the name of the title, unified. We are unifying two titles together, but then we split them apart again, right? And we should have seen this coming when Don Callis was still walking around with both the Continental Championship and the International title, while Okada wore the Unified Championship. We should have understood that, oh, wait a second. They're going to split these belts up again. It's all so dumb. It's all dumb and it's stupid. And I don't know. I can't hear arguments defending this. I think it's indefensible. I think it was a waste of time. It was a complete and utter waste of time to create this title, then to disband it. What is it for? Like, what, the lineages are split again. We're back down two lanes now. It's also stupid. It's dumb. Like, I don't know. I don't know why Tony Khan felt compelled to do this. And now in the meantime, we've added another title, which we thought was going to take the place of the international title. But now we actually have an international title and a national title. And the national title was explained to us to be a thing that would be defended in promotions all over the world, so on and so forth, just like the international title. So it's like, I don't even know what the difference is. Who cares? Now there's a title too many. Now there's a title too many in AEW, and it irks me. It annoys me. Bad move. But I got that out of the way. Let's get into the Continental Classic itself and the finals and semifinals. Let me tell you, this is such a far cry to what I had predicted was going to happen in the finals. I was certain that they were going to do Takeshita and Okada, in the finals. I was so sure that they were going to do that. And when it ended up that they were going to meet in the semis, I was like, oh, okay. Then probably Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita then, right? And that didn't happen either. So it's like, holy smokes, okay. Like, I was just completely out to lunch on this one. And look, I mean, Mox, I understand the results, and we'll walk through some, how I see it, I perceive it, and I believe I have the right take here, because I understand the results. I think the results, ultimately, Jon Moxley winning the tournament, I think it's good, and I think Mox is an excellent choice because of how much of a workhorse he is throughout this entire fucking year. And I've been seeing some comments, people saying, that essentially people say that this was an undeserved babyface turn, that there was no indication that, that just spontaneously out of nowhere, he's a babyface. He's cutting babyface promos at the end of the show. But I think I think that this is a situation where you look back and you look at the breadcrumbs that were right there all along, and then it sort of dawns on you and you're like, this has been a perfect year of storytelling, and it only becomes apparent with the end result. Then it becomes a hindsight is 2020 type of situation, right? It started, all of the Jon Moxley stuff started with him wanting to tear down, to rebuild AEW into what it was meant to be, right? Something that from the get-go, I was like, how does this make him a heel? It's like, I too, John, want you to remake AEW in your image. Like, I am 100% okay with this. So, everything starts off with him wanting to do that, right? And he starts to work towards that goal by cheating, by depending on the Death Riders to help him achieve victories. This has been a target, a thing for weeks now, for months at this point, that people pointing out that Jon Moxley can't win matches without Death Rider help. He realizes that he himself realizes, I can't do this without help. What does that say about me? Right? And then he hits rock bottom, because even in situations where he has help, he can't do it. He hits rock bottom when he loses against lower mid-carder Kyle O'Reilly. And then the C2, by extension, becomes his proving ground. It becomes the place in which he has to prove to himself that he still has the stuff, right? This is where the headcanon of the Death Riders turning on Mox starts to begin, right? Like, oh, they're all going to turn on him because he's not winning matches anymore, and so on and so forth. But he wants to see if he can do it. He wants to get in that tournament, and he said it in multiple promos throughout the C2 that, this is where he gets to see if the heart of AEW still beats, if the place that he believed in, that he gave himself to, is still there. And by extension, is he still involved? Is he still a part of it? Can he still live up to the expectations? And he finally finishes the tournament having overcome adversity, injury, weakness, fulfilling the promise that he made to himself, to AEW, and to AEW fans. And that's why he cuts the promo at the end where he's like, we all did, this goes, he says the title goes to everyone who was in the tournament. It goes to you fans for sticking around and enjoying this. And I'm like, this fucking rules. Now it becomes full circle. Now Mox understands that he was part of the problem, and it took him going back to the roots of what professional wrestling is to find his way again. Now that, folks, that is long-term storytelling. And long-term storytelling that doesn't hammer you over the head with the details, with the beats, making sure, hey, did you notice this? You had to be watching. You had to be paying attention. You had to be listening to the promos. Weren't just empty words. Mox was feeding you the story the whole time. That's what I'm saying. It's a hindsight is 2020 situation. Then now you realize just how really good of a story this all has been, and how it all makes sense, and how it has been a slow babyface turn. Because there was a point where I was watching the C2, listening to Mox cut his promos, and I'm like, but I agree with everything he's saying. I want to cheer for Jon Moxley now, because everything he says is absolutely true. And he's going out there and he's killing. He's having a great tournament. He's having a great year. And he's had a great year. And it's capping off with a great accomplishment. A great way to punctuate this great year. And to think there were people 12 months ago who were demanding that this guy return to WWE. You know who you are. There were people 12 months ago who were demanding that that were stating first and foremost that he was washed and that he should go back to WWE. This man, who has been an ace for this company, a dependable backbone of AEW, the guy that the company would always turn to in case of emergency, whatever shitty situation AEW found itself in, they could always count on Jon Moxley. And on top of that, unwavering workhorse, a guy who preaches by what he does more than what he says, a guy who clearly loves the place he works at, and a place that just happens to be the only place that will allow him to do what he does in the way he does it and entertain us along the way. You wanted this man gone. You know who you are. What has this shown? It has shown once again, like I have also said multiple times, you never bet against Jon Moxley. I didn't during the worst parts of the Death Riders, because I'm not trying to retcon the situation here. The Death Riders stuff for months was awful. And I'm not trying to change that. I'm not sitting here with, well, it was actually good. No, it really wasn't. But I was not ready to throw Jon Moxley out with the bathwater. I'll tell you that. You never heard me say that. And I didn't discount Mox even during that terrible IWGP World Championship run. And now more than ever, if there was ever a moment for you to realize that this is the lesson you have to learn, never ever bet against Jon Moxley. And I know a lot of the cope now is that, well, Moxley was bad because he was saddled with Adam Copeland, and no pun intended, right? But that is retconning. That's retconning. The Death Riders were bad. And a lot of you couldn't see past the Death Riders stinking. Again, I say a lot of you. Those of you who called for his demise, his departure, that's retconning the situation because it was bad, but you couldn't see past it. You couldn't just see that Mox was being entangled in some terrible booking. And yes, the Cope stuff also stunk, but it was just one thing amongst other things. Now we're just shifting it's Cope's fault. No. It was a more systemic. There were more systemic reasons for the whole Death Rider stuff to not work. But I never thought Jon Moxley was a guy that you had to jettison out of your company because he had no more value. And if you are listening, if you right now are listening to this and you are one of those who wanted Jon Moxley out of the company, shame on you. Shame on you. Jon Moxley has a legitimate argument to be Wrestler of the Year. I don't think he will. I think I think there's a certain masked guy working, an arena in Mexico who will probably clinch that this year, who has a very, very, an extremely strong argument. But I will listen to anyone. I will listen to anyone make a proper argument for Mox. I could probably make a proper argument for Mox. The only thing that I think hurts Mox is the weak start of the year and the business side of things. I think those are just like the two elements that kind of work against him, because otherwise, after the match where he took the spiked baseball bat to the spiked bat, it's not a baseball bat. Hey, why am I doing this to myself? The match where he fell on the spiked bat was the moment where everything started pointing upwards again. And he started reverting to the Jon Moxley of old, started getting back into the ring every week, started working his ass off, showing everyone, leading by example, main eventing AEW's biggest show of the year, having a compelling summer and post All In as well, having an exceptional C2, winning the whole thing. And being a consistent anchor in AEW, something that is a consistent badge of quality in this company. You could never go wrong with Jon Moxley doing what he does best, being confident, being happy, feeling it. That's when Jon Moxley's at his best. He turned a bad run around and ended up having an objectively excellent year. Sports Illustrated may have given, all of their awards and all that stuff, and, Will Ospreay, who hasn't wrestled for most of the year and whatnot. But Jon Moxley, I think, has been if not one of the top MVPs of the company in 2025. I sincerely believe that. And it's funny how his vision, his Death Rider vision of AEW came to light when in the C2, where he was like, well, I'm finding it like, he'd often say the C2 is pure. He'd say that a few times in his promos about the purity of the C2. And that sort of brought him to the finish line. That's why having him win the C2 made so much sense. He was a guy who wanted to make wrestling pure. That was the first, thing, right? That was the original aspect of it. And he ended up accomplishing that, winning AEW's purest expression of pro wrestling, which is the Continental Classic. It's a tremendous pick. I don't have any real issues about it. Counterpoint. I have issues about it. When are we going to push the new guys? I want to say the young guys, but there's one of the guys I have in mind. He's over 30, but when are we going to legitimately pull the trigger on a Kyle Fletcher, on a Konosuke Takeshita? When are we going to truly invest into these guys? Look, I'm a huge Okada fan, big Moxley fan. I'm not disappointed, right? It's not a question where I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I think both these guys can go. I think they're both still extremely good at what they do. It's more a question of, but it's more like, oh, it's these guys again. And you can have that argument. I'm sitting here saying, stalwart guy that you can always count on, Jon Moxley. And I don't have a problem with it, but I can understand someone who does. Someone who can go, oh, Jon Moxley again? This is the guy we turn to again. We've been doing this for years now. Okada in the finals. And I understand all of that. I understand. And I cannot but think of the young guys and how maybe it's a little disheartening for them at some point where it's like, well, when do we get more than our foot in the door? Because you can argue that Takeshita has his foot in the door. He's had his foot in the door for a while. You can argue that Kyle Fletcher absolutely has his foot in the door. But when can they actually cross the threshold? When can they fully when does the whole body cross the door and come into that room? Like there's that point too, where there's going to be that point where you're going to want these guys to shine and truly become the wrestlers that a lot of us see what they are. And we're talking about these guys, but what about Daniel Garcia, who is exactly, look, I've talked about this multiple times. Ever since he re-signed to AEW, he's been exactly in the same spot he's been before signing. Like, he's still talented, he's still fine, but he's just a guy in a unit instead of capitalizing off of an excellent story they could tell in the C2 where, he falls short a couple of years, but then this 1 year, he's not falling short and he's fighting Okada in the finals and he wins, kind of like what I was saying on the Dynamite review when we were sort of giving a bit of a recap of the C2. And it's like, where are the guys? Particularly when it came to the Gold League that had the big blob of 6 points. It's like, why has this not been booked for people to stick out, to stand out, to be like, oh, fuck yeah, this is a guy we need to follow. This is the company saying, this is someone that we see a future in, and you got to keep your eye on this dude here. Why aren't we doing that? Anyway, I think it's an interesting counterpoint to bring up. And I think it's a completely valid point. And, like most promotions in 2025, I don't have a reason as to why, we're not pushing the younger talent in especially in some places that would desperately need the fresh air. Anyway, let's talk about the matches, the C2 matches, the semifinals. Kazuchika Okada defeating Konosuke Takeshita. Look, you probably already know how I feel about this match, the finish specifically. You probably know that I hate it. You probably know that I think it's a shit finish. Probably figured that you probably already know that I think it's an unfortunate reality of watching American pro wrestling in 2025, where even in an environment where things are supposed to be controlled, like no interference and, pure pro wrestling, pure sports-based presentation, like Tony had promised when he had started it up, we cannot but help trying to sports entertainment up the thing and throw in the goofy screwdriver stuff where you're like, this is unnecessary and dumb. And look, I posted it on Blue Sky, and again, like, people coming in and creating headcanon around it. Oh, well, this is probably to do this, and that. And like, you're creating stuff to try and stuff that's not there to justify this. And a lot of the stuff that they were bringing up, such as, well, you know, by doing this, Takeshita is going to probably want his pound of flesh, and, you know, this probably will set up another series of matches. And I'm like, you could have done that without the goofy screwdriver, because the whole thing with these two guys, Okada and Takeshita, right? The match that everyone was really excited to see and that they put in the semifinals to announce the match so that people would see that the match is actually happening and that they would go out and buy a ticket or buy the pay-per-view. The thing between these two guys is that it's their feud has always been just about being alpha males, just about being egos, having big egos is what I meant. That's the basis of their feud. It's not anything like, oh, you know, this guy stole my hat, or, you know, Don likes him more than I do. It's nothing like that. It's just they both just cannot occupy the same space. This town ain't big enough for the two of us, essentially. So whatever outcome that you perceive coming out of, you know, Takeshita being hit in the forehead with the screwdriver, it could have been achieved on the basis of the feud regardless, where Takeshita could have been just like, you know what, fuck you, I want a rematch. And Okada going, no, bitch, you are not getting a rematch, you know. Hey, whatever. You're just creating headcanon to justify a bad finish. This was a bad finish. And it's not just the screwdriver. It's the whole thing. Because the referee wasn't even fucking distracted. They completely messed up the finish. The referee wasn't even watching what was going on. He was keeping himself distracted because he knew he had to be distracted so that he wouldn't see the shot. And you look in the back, you rewatch the footage, and you can see Paul Turner in the background, like walking around the back of the ring, you know, just looking outside the ring. And you're like, what the fuck is he doing as the referee? So it's all utter bullshit. And you can tell by the reaction that the crowd had, but they didn't like it either. Oh, it's great heel heat, Warren. Okay. But I would argue that you could still get really good heel heat regardless. Oh, what, Warren, they had to protect Takeshita because he's the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. And they didn't want Okada to win clean. They didn't want Takeshita to lose clean. Like, sure, there's probably politics involved. 100%. I buy, that is the theory that I buy into the most. But then you could have had Takeshita win. you maybe, bold idea, I know. But then it like, you could like have Takeshita win. And in the meantime, the sanctity of your tournament is preserved. And I know, look, if you're already in the comments saying, oh, but Warren, Tony Khan has only ever promised that there was no interference, never said anything about cheating, like you're putting up the fine print of a fucking contract. Listen, he may not have said specifically, he may never mention no cheating is allowed. But when he talks about it, from the get-go, the way it's promoted by commentary, that this is no frills, no bullshit, no interference, just straight up pro wrestling, right? That's what I expect. No shenanigans then. Then I expect no chairs or fucking hidden fucking screwdrivers. I'm like, oh my God. Hidden screwdrivers. It made me so upset. And it is a shit finish. The finish was awful. It was awful. And in the context of the C2, it's worse. And you can try to counter argument that, but good luck. That was a real disappointment because I thought they were having an excellent match. They truly were having an excellent match. And I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know why they decided to. I don't know why we had to go that route. I just don't get it. And you see, this is why I keep every year with the C2, I keep AEW at arm's length, because they just get into their own way. You know, the first year, don't forget, the first year they had the semifinals being a 3-way on the first fucking year of the tournament. I'm like, this sucks. And now this year, it's like they're doing this. I'm like, okay, well, this sucks. This sucks too. Like, where do we turn to just get like straight up pro wrestling? Why do we always have to have nonsense? Anyway, that's more of a rhetorical question. But then, you know, things were kind of swept away when Jon Moxley defeated Kyle Fletcher. This fucking ruled. What a great match. Excellent match that got me cheering, fist pumping in my living room. When Mox is kicking out of is kicking out of brain busters, and we do the Liger bomb towards the end, and then Fletcher goes for the half crab, the single leg crab, and he goes in deep, and then Mox reverses into the bulldog choke, and I'm sitting there and I'm pumping my fist and I'm going, yeah! I'm so into it. Like, this was an exercise in excellent in-ring storytelling, because the babyface turn was not clear to anyone at this point, but Mox and Fletcher worked this perfectly, with such perfection, and just continued to build, and the moves got bigger and sicker. Man, that sleeper suplex where fucking Kyle Fletcher landed on top of his dome was the scariest shit of the night. And then Fletcher somehow gets back up and he hits a half and half suplex and knee strike, covers. Mox kicks out at one. I'm standing and pacing. I am so into it. The only stain was the nonsense with the screwdriver, with Kyle looking for the screwdriver, and you know, again, like, oh, but that's the story they were telling. I was much more compelled with the story that they were telling in this match, more than any meta fucking story that they were telling about, you know, about Kazuchika Okada and Don Callis. And who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck when the match that you're watching is completely immersing yourself? It's completely immersing you, right? 100%. This was the best match of the tournament, and it was absolutely excellent. For me, like, it's a 4 3/4 star match. It again shows that Kyle Fletcher is ready for the spot. Mox is excellent, and the story they told here with the ankle and whatnot, which has been the prevalent story of Mox's last 5 to 6 months, just continued and played a part in the main event. This match was absolutely phenomenal. Just go out. This is a high level recommendation. Go watch this and enjoy it. This was tremendous. The audience was into it. Like, you know, that's what this C2, this is what this Continental Classic should be delivering. It's absolutely phenomenal stuff. And Kyle just dies. He gets put to sleep. And you know, he's trying to keep his arms up, and he's holding the referee's hands like, no, don't do this shit. But he can't get up. He can't do it. He's turning purple. It's fantastic. And then after the match, of course, he chop blocks Mox to make him, to soften him up some more, just out of spite. It's such good stuff. And then we go to the finals, and I gotta say, I thought this match was going to be, I thought Mox and Okada were going to work a more Japanese style match. I thought that they were going to pull out more of a New Japan style fighting spirit type of situation, as opposed to what we got, which felt a lot more, it felt a lot more of a classic dominant heel match where, you know, the heel is in control for the vast majority of the match, you know, exploiting a weakness on the babyface so that the babyface can have the explosive comeback. And I mean, that's what happened, right? Mox's leg was targeted and so on. And but I felt like there wasn't any real momentum that was built, and I thought the final sequence was good. When Mox, when they start exchanging elbows and Okada gets the drop kick, and then Okada hits the backslide, lands a Rainmaker. Mox does a paradigm shift, and then Mox hits a Rainmaker of his own. That whole sequence there. I thought that was good, but not enough to really like sustain me and be like, okay. I felt like not as a final stretch. Like I felt like it was a good build to a final stretch. I don't like it. It was missing. It was missing some spark, some momentum, especially after the incredible semifinal that Mox and Fletcher delivered. I felt that this match under-delivered. Not a bad match, but I think it under-delivered. I was sitting with I was watching this with my oldest son, who watches wrestling when he's in town with his dad, and his dad is like, well, I gotta watch wrestling. So then he sits down and he enjoys it, right? Don't get me wrong. He's just not he's the very definition of a casual viewer. And but he's watched enough with me, and he's seen my reactions and whatnot, and we were both excited for Fletcher and Mox. And after the match, he's like, he asked me, Mox Okada, is it me or was it a little disappointing? And I don't blame you. I don't blame you for feeling that, especially after the high velocity match that we got before. Was this just like Okada deciding to not put in the work? I don't know. I don't know. But it wasn't like the match told a story, but wasn't a high level C2 match. We had much better matches than this all throughout the league stage of the C2. So I give it 3.5 stars, 3 3/4 maybe, but it doesn't break 4. It doesn't break 4 for me. But look, I've said all I had to say about Mox and his victory, and how good nonetheless I think it is, and how the babyface turn has gone. Basically in his post-match promo, right, rejecting the personal glory that comes, says that that the title belongs to everyone in the tournament. The wrestlers who work their asses off, the fans who support AEW, my crew here, he says that AEW is the hardest working wrestlers in the world. They give 100% every time. It was truly a rah-rah speech. Proud of the grind, proud of the fans. Great babyface speech, if you ask me. I got no issues with it. So there you go. Those were our top. Those were the most the most significant happenings in the match, on the show, I should say. Why don't we then keep going, and we'll talk about the matches we haven't covered in reverse order, starting from the AEW Women's World Championship going down. So Chris Statlander retains her title by defeating Jamie Hayter. You know what I'm starting to see in regards to Chris Statlander matches, and I don't know if it's because the crowds are exhausted. I don't know exactly what it is, but Chris Statlander's pattern of matches, it seems, is the following: great matches, strong, well executed, but lack momentum, lack energy, lack that next level, a next gear. There's a hump that her matches can't get over, despite them being like extremely sound and really good. And it's not that the audience, I don't think the audience in this circumstance was exhausted and didn't want to cheer when there were exciting things happening. And quite frankly, they happened mostly when Jamie Hayter was doing some explosive stuff. They were into it. They were ready to cheer. There's just something that is not quite clicking with the audiences in Statlander's World Championship matches. I don't have the foresight right now to tell you what it is, but there's something that is just not clicking, despite the fact that her matches are great. There's no, she's a great pro wrestler. I don't think anyone was doubting that she wouldn't have. I don't think anyone was doubting the fact that she would have great matches. She's been doing exactly that, but there's just something not there. There's just something not there, and I can't put my finger on it. I just can't. Anyway, I enjoyed the match. I thought it was very good. Again, like another great match by Statlander, but just the crowd is just like empty. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but it was very good. I mean, look, these women were just dropping each other with big strikes and big moves and dropping each other on their head and look and on their necks. This is another one where Jamie Hayter ate a fucking was it Hayter? Yeah, it was Jamie Hayter who landed high up on her neck and just like that was an avalanche Michinoku driver, right? That was awesome. What are we talking about? You know, and it was a scary bump by Hayter, but she was fine. She finished the match. Everything's cool as far as we know. Again, I don't have, I don't have really anything bad to say about the match. I just wish it had the spark. Before that, this is kind of weird. But if I don't cover it now, I feel I'm going to forget about it. Before this match, backstage, we had Mercedes Moné have a meltdown. She destroyed things in her locker room because she got pinned in the Women's World Tag Team match earlier on in the evening. Breaks some stuff, breaks the TV, breaks a mirror, a whole bunch of shit. And then, comes out to talk to Lexi Nair and says, listen, Willow Nightingale thinks she's hot shit. Well, I'm going to beat her up on New Year's Smash this Wednesday, Dynamite. I'm going to beat the tar out of her. So that's a good thing because I think, because I absolutely think that, Willow Nightingale should be in a single situation, doing this kind of stuff with Mercedes Moné and taking the TBS title off of her, but that's just me. Then we had before that, we had the Mixed Nuts Mayhem match where the Death Riders, Claudio Castagnoli, Daniel Garcia, Marina Shafir, and Wheeler Yuta took on Roderick Strong and the conglomeration duo of Orange Cassidy and Mark Briscoe and Tony Storm. And this was a party match. Look, there was a lot of goofiness. Crowd was into it. They had a lot of fun and there was a lot of silliness. And, I enjoyed it. It was fine. I'm not going to break it down. I don't think it's this incredible, great match, but everyone worked hard. It was a PWG party match. It's what it is. And it was fun. And, it really got the audience into it. And Tony Storm got the big swing from Claudio, and it was fine. I have no issues with it. It was just a party match, and that's it. That's all you really need from me, and it served its purpose. Darby Allin defeated Gabe Kidd in a great 13-minute or so, something to that effect, right? I don't have the times pulled up here. I'm going to go look. Darby, just a bloody beatdown. Gabe Kidd doing what he should be doing in this circumstance, and that is throwing Darby Allin around. That was fantastic. It was a tremendous, bloody, brutal beat him up, and everyone's bleeding, and Gabe Kidd is just, he's got the crimson mask flowing. Just tremendous stuff. And again, like I'm going to point it out again, Gabe Kidd has cut weight. And I don't think he's cutting weight because my guess would be he's not cutting weight because people in New Japan are asking him to. Look, I'm not saying that this is the case. I don't know anything about what Gabe Kidd is going to be doing for the rest of his career, but there's a lot of talk recently about Dave Finlay. There might be some talk about Gabe Kidd coming up. And again, this is just me supposing. I don't know anything. I'm not reporting. I'm just following my gut feeling, right? A lot of time, y'all should start learning that you need to start listening to Warren more. So keep that in mind. Anyway, this was a big bloody brawl, and Jesus Christ, like a coffin drop from the top to the floor, completely unprotected. Darby Allin is like, no wonder he lost feeling in his legs during that one match, right? Jesus Christ. I enjoyed myself tremendously. That was a lot of fun. Then we had the AEW Women's World Tag Team Championship match that happened that we just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, where the Babes of Wrath, Harley Cameron and Willow Nightingale, retained their titles by defeating Mercedes Moné and Athena. This was fine. I thought it was a little rough at times. I don't know. I thought it was a little rough at times. I think the crisper, cleaner moments were clearly when it was Willow Nightingale and Mercedes. Like, these are really top-notch wrestlers. Athena sometimes like there's stretches where she's really good, and then there's stretches that she just becomes just plain old sloppy, and you're like, what are you doing? But I thought she had fire. I thought she was into, all the women in this match did, but I thought Athena sort of stood out. I've also noticed that she minimizes a lot of her bad Ring of Honor ticks, where she doesn't do too many poses or goofy faces or overacts. I think she understands what she does, because she tames it. She dials it back a lot, is what I was trying to say. She dials it back a lot when she wrestles on AEW programming, as opposed to Ring of Honor, where she's constantly posing and doing faces and reacting and monologuing and just get to it, right? That's a personal grievance of mine. But she's also occasionally sloppy, and I think it shined a little bit here. Couple of instances, one which was kind of unfortunate because she was really trying to do an impressive power move by lifting Willow up on her shoulders, and she sort of stumbled. That that kind of stuff can happen. And I mean, look, Harley, this was a good showing by Harley, but you can tell Harley is miles, like all three of the other women in this match are miles away better than Harley, but that's a question of experience and whatnot. I think Harley is going to be what she is. I don't know how much she's going to improve. I think this will be a what you see is what you get type of situation. She could be worse, but you got to be careful of the positions that you put people like Harley Cameron in, where she's not a great worker, and if you're putting her in positions where she's in top spots, where she's wrestling top people, where she's supposed to be considered a challenge, where she's a champion, then it can start to expose things that can work against her, where then people are a lot more forgiving if she's like hanging out in the mid card doing Harley Cameron things. I don't think anyone has an issue with that, but like I have trouble buying Harley Cameron serious champion. That's just me. I can understand that this can be this might be a me issue more than anything else, and that's fine. I can live with that. Yeah, it was an okay match. It was fine. I don't have a problem with it. It's nothing. It's a match I've already forgotten about. If it wasn't for my notes here, it's like, what happened exactly? But yeah, it's all right. It's fine. And FTR retained the AEW Men's World Tag Team Championship against the Bang Bang Gang duo of Austin Gunn and Rock Hard Juice Robinson. This match went too long. I think a shorter match would have been beneficial, particularly when it comes to the fact that I don't think anyone really bought that Austin Gunn and Juice were going to beat FTR for the title, so that really sort of doesn't help. I think the match should have kind of wrapped up, at that instance where FTR is like hyper focused on Juice's knee, and Dax has Juice in the inverted figure 4, and Austin's trying to save him, and Dax goes through a table and whatnot with that insane dive. I think that's where the match should have ended. I think Juice should have just tapped there. Because he's reaching for the ropes and whatnot, and I'm going, it doesn't matter if you reach for the ropes. It's no disqualification. Who cares, It's a street fight. By the way, FTR, in their gear for a street fight, very disappointed in Dax and Cash here coming to a street fight in their gear. I don't like it. But it's like, I thought the match went too long. I think you really could have shaved a lot of this. It really should have finished. Because the crowd was into it too. The crowd was super invested into the knee stuff. I think that was the peak. They should have hit it there. Everything after that was just like, oh, okay, we're still doing things. Stoke is involved in doing stuff, and then the final stretch. It went a little too long. That's my main criticism of it. It's a good little match, but probably would have enjoyed it more if it had been a little shorter. And I think that covers the main card. On the pre-show, we had the Sisters of Sin defeating High-End and Maya World. Why am I excited? Why am I raising my voice here? Well, because High-End, Maya World came out again, got a full entrance, matching gear, music, the whole shebang. And at the end of their match, got the graphic saying that they had signed with AEW, that they were now all elite. So I think that officially concludes the bit, where I sit around and make snide comments about how High-End and Maya World are maybe doing things that is not good for their brand, and so on and so forth. Listen, look, I am thrilled about the signing for a couple of reasons. First reason, High-End, she's been doing this for such a long time. Like, this is someone who has been on the indies grinding for such a long fucking time. And I am so stoked that she is finally getting an opportunity with a major league company where she can make a good solid living. She's been, the past, year and a half, 2 years or so, she's been a pillar of Deadlock Pro. I think she did excellent work over there. And she's always been like this type of wrestler where I've wondered, why does no one pick her up? I didn't understand why High-End just couldn't seem to get a gig with AEW or even WWE back in the day. Like, why is she being passed over? What's the situation? And I started to think, well, in these types of situations, it typically means that the problem, that the wrestler themselves might be the issue. And I'm like, but High-End, everything I hear about her is she's such a nice person. I'm like, I don't understand. So look, whatever happened here, well, we know what happened here, but I'll get to that. But I'm happy for her because she's been at this for a long time, and I think she deserves it. We throw around the "you deserve it" stuff quite a bit, sometimes unnecessarily, but I think she has proven that she should be on big time TV, and good for her. And Maya World, well, listen, Maya World is still very, very much a rookie. She's still very green at this. She's been doing this for like 2 years, 3 years tops. She's a prospect, and it's good that AEW got their hands on her. Hopefully she will be able to continue to grow. Hopefully that'll be the situation, as opposed to having gotten signed too early, because that's also something that can happen sometimes. Hopefully, because I think she's tremendous. I think there's a lot of upside to Maya World. So good signings on both ends. And then, of course, well, the other reason that makes me happy is because, well, it still shows that the pro wrestling business, even though it has gone through so many permutations over the decades, that there's still part of it that is indeed a meritocracy, that you work and you grind for your spot, and then you get like an opportunity, you open the door and you just dive in and you go for it. And if you play your cards right, you will be rewarded. Right? And look, some people decided that losing to a squash was bad for their brand. And that opened up the door for these two ladies here to run in and take that opportunity that the others failed to grasp. These two women ran in, made it their own, and now, appeared on TV a few times, got signed. I heard they'd been signed for easily a month, and then, then you wait for the graphic announcement that doesn't, it happens eventually down the line, but they've been signed for about a month. And then, one person's fumble becomes another's opportunity. And I'm glad to see that this environment still exists. So, it sucks for Alizé and Newell, but I have trouble truly feeling bad for them because they had the opportunity in their hands. They decided to squander it for whatever reason, for ego. And then it opens up the door for other people, two other women who are more than glad to have the shot, and it paid off for them in the end. They are signed members of the roster. Congratulations to Hyan and Maya World. Even though they lost the match, they won the war. I don't know. Something like that. Eddie Kingston defeated Zach Gibson, continuing that little feud. And we also had the big return of Ortiz, where I myself was like, holy shit, that's right, this guy works here. It's all right then. And Bandito and Mascara Dorada defeated Mark Davis and Rocky Romero. Putting Rocky in this match was tremendous. Mascara Dorado and Rocky had a great exchange, being, CMLL guys and whatnot. Dorado was able to shine, Romero doing his best heel work to get Dorado over. So, a nice little final payday before probably heading back to CMLL for a while. Thank you for your service in the C2, Dorada. And Bandito is over as crazy. So it is what it is. And then Jet Speed and Dino 210 defeated Josh Alexander and The Demand. And, it had the trope of Luchasaurus being taken out, dragged to the back, and then coming back in mid-match and whatnot. And it is what it is. So there you go. That's the big World's End show from All Elite Wrestling to wrap up 2025. Like I said, a good show. But, outside of one particular match, I don't think there's anything really that I'm like, you absolutely have to see this. Go out of your way to watch Jon Moxley and Kyle Fletcher. I think that's a remarkable match. Everything else is, you won't be bored to tears, but AEW has put on much more exciting pay-per-views than this, but still good. I think it's a question of them being a victim of their own success. How about that? Yeah, those are my thoughts.